Okay, we are calling this open meeting back to order. And we are going back to items missed earlier today. We are going to 6.2.1, which is a temporary use permit number 74 for Fortis BC Energy Incorporated Electoral Area D. And that has been updated in your packages and updated online. And I will turn it over to Ms. Dewar. Nope, I will turn it over to Ms. Peterniak.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that there is some confusion as to where this is located. If you don't object, I will share my screen to show you the parcel.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So if everyone can see this now, we are looking at electoral area D. This is Squamish here in gray. And the parcel in question is this parcel right here. It's just for a bit more context, Britannia Beach is right here. And the parcel is across the water, across the house zone. And the proposed use, it's quite a large parcel, but the proposed use is going to be right here in this little triangle. Yeah, so I will stop sharing now. So for more context on the application and a little summary, it's a 3-year temporary use application to allow infrastructure that will support the construction of the wood fiber gas pipeline project. And this infrastructure includes company field offices, contractor field offices, personnel lunchrooms, heated washroom facilities, and wash stations. These structures are not permitted in the associated zoning, which is Rural Resource 4, so a temporary use permit or rezoning is required. Building permits will also be required for these structures if they are approved. In terms of servicing, they're proposing to use propane for heating, generators for electricity, and a septic tank for waste. Wood fiber LNG will supply non-potable water, and potable water will be brought on site by barge. In terms of site disturbance, there will be clearing associated with building footprints only, and remediation will take place after the removal of temporary buildings. In terms of regional benefits, which is something that came up at the last meeting, the applicants have informed us that the proposed infrastructure will facilitate pipeline construction between Squamish and Coquitlam, which will deliver natural gas to the wood fiber LNG facility for export overseas, which will help reduce emissions in other parts of the world where coal is the primary fuel source. However, there are some local benefits as well. Fortis will be electrifying the upstream compression system as part of this project, and this system feeds the SLRD in District of Squamish. And this is expected to reduce operating emissions by 90%. Overall, this project will improve the reliability of the overall gas delivery system, and it will increase affordability for SLRD and District of Squamish customers. With regard to public notifications, we did place notice in the Peak newspaper, which is a regional newspaper, thereby fulfilling our obligations under Section 494 of the Local Government Act. Our policy also dictates to send notices to neighbors within 150 meters of the site. However, as the site is very remote, there were no neighbors within that distance. And while we did receive one request for more information, we have not received any feedback on the application thus far. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Stoner, question.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, appreciate the further detail and that the Peak is technically a regional paper. But I'm curious why we didn't post notification in the Squamish Chief, given that that is probably more relevant to the affected areas.
Through the chair, there is no specific reason. We just generally deal more with the peak, and so we chose to go with them at this time.
Okay, go ahead, Director Demare.
Thank you. Mr. Tendovik, just curious. Previously, there was a work camp on the east side of, proposed on the east side of Squamish. Is this where it's moved to now? Or is there going to be two work camps?
Through the chair, I am not aware of the other work camp, but I do know that there will be more activity taking place within the district of Squamish specifically. This site under question under TUP 74 is specifically just for supporting structures to house the workers.
But do we know how many, what the workforce is for that camp? Like the amount of units that, how many people it will support?
I'm not 100% sure. I can get back to you on that later on the number of workers.
If I remember right, originally in somewhere in my memory, there was a work camp of around
600.
600.
And that number has been moved to a different site outside of our jurisdiction. So that's not, we can talk about that after,
Okay.
but that's not an
Yeah.
issue for this
Okay.
meeting. And
So the
I don't
other
know
question
what that
is,
would be.
who owns this property?
Through the chair, this is, I believe this is a Crown-owned property, and they do, Fortis does have permission to do this on that property.
Another relevant question is, when wood fiber was running, did they have accommodations at that site?
No.
It's hard
That was a
for her to
town,
answer.
So what I'm getting at is, why wouldn't they have it where their infrastructure is going? And I presume they'll have power there.
It's more complicated than that.
Well, these are
It's a
two
lot
questions.
more-
I'm just asking these questions because
Sure.
I look at it, it's on Crown land. When they probably own that land where wood fiber is. And they could do it on their own property. It's a, you know. And again, what is that workforce there? How many people?
A lot.
Like, yeah,
They're now in front of the district of Squamish. And it's, yeah, you said that. We'll get back to you with those answers.
yeah.
Director Pattengill, go ahead with the question.
Yeah, a couple. One, are we able to do any validation of Fortis's claim benefits? Because the research I hear is that LNG is not better than coal, and it's actually quite likely offsetting solar and wind and so on, not just coal. There's evidence from Australia and so on that when you start exporting LNG, it pushes up natural gas prices and so on. So I'm just, have we done anything to validate their claims of benefits, or?
Through the chair, we have not done anything to validate their claims, but we can certainly request that they provide more documentation showing their claims to be true.
Okay, and then just building off of Director Demare's question, having been at the site, it's not clear to me. I mean, wood fiber has offices near there. There's roads to, as far as I can tell, various edges of the property. So it's not clear, what they're doing there, why, and for this site, like what is going to be there, how much fuel is going to be stored there, what sort of vehicles, what sort of emissions on the site during the period. There's a new study. I'll leave it at that. I guess environmental assessments of what's there. species at risk and so on. And so what are the impacts going to be? Have we received any of that kind of information from them? And yeah, to support what they plan to do?
Through the chair, so this application is specifically for offices and washroom facilities. I think some of those other uses you've mentioned may be on the district property, and we did not receive information on what is going to be happening within the district of Squamish.
Sorry, no, just for clarity from the pictures, and it's hard to tell because there isn't a lot of detail about what they want to do. It looked to me like there's a bunch of parking spots. So I assume vehicles, and what we have seen from other applications before this is where they want to put vehicles, they also want large fuel storage tanks and so on. So is that part of this, and what are the risks there? And you know, what are the, you know, what's the environmental context of that area now, and what impacts will this proposal have on that?
Through the chair, we are not aware of fuel storage. This has not been mentioned in the application, but something that certainly can be confirmed with them for fuel storage for vehicle use. And in terms of site clearing, we generally permit that in association with building permit applications. There is no additional permits that we require for clearing the site, and we are not aware of the ecological situation on that site at the moment.
Okay, I'll leave it there for now. Thanks.
Director Stoner?
Thank you. Following on that, do we have clarity on how, like, where folks will be coming from and how they're going to get to this site?
Through the chair, we don't know where they're hiring workers. I believe in part it will be from the district of Squamish, as they did mention employment opportunities, and they will be arriving by barge.
And then my other question was this referred to the district of Squamish?
Through the chair, it was not referred to the district of Squamish. That is not part of our typical temporary use permit process.
That's it for now, Chair. Thank you.
Director Herford? Welcome to you, Ben.
Thank you. Is Director Pettingill asked the question around fuel storage. Is that an allowable use in the existing zone? I'm just trying to understand what we are attempting to capture in the temporary usage, and if that's a whole or that's something that's already allowed in the zone, and it's only the specific uses that we're trying to manage through a temporary use permit.
Through the chair, fuel storage is not typically a use that is permitted, and it's specifically not permitted in the rural resource for zone. And the reason we're requesting a TUP is because this is essentially a work camp or an industrial use of sorts, and that is also not a use permitted under the TUP. And if they are intending to store fuel, which they have not indicated if they are or not, but we will confirm that later. If they are intending to do that, that will be included in the TUP as a requested use.
Yeah, just the I'm curious about this piece. I guess it's important just by itself, given that I think was it heating by propane and diesel generation.
Yeah.
So where is a fuel tank that's needed for heat differ from fuel storage, or same with a generator? Like you want to generally, if you need to generate power, you want it accessible all the time, so you'd have some level of redundancy and have some quantity of fuel. So I'm really curious about that, and I think that really is part of the essence of my next question, which is the riparian, any riparian considerations. I found it particularly challenging with the mapping. I appreciate you started your presentation with some orientation to the project, but I think it was really lacking to be able to contemplate what's there. Having been on the site, there's creeks and little wetland pockets kind of all over the place. And how is that considered in your recommendation for this?
Through the chair, there is a creek, as you indicated, Miller Creek. They are sufficiently away from that creek based on their site plan. So our setback is 30 meters, and they are significantly more than 30 meters away from that.
Okay, and was geotech work done on the site to ensure that stability against it's steep kind of everywhere there? So I was surprised to see that there was a piece of flat ground that didn't already have a purpose.
Through the chair, geotech is something we require at the building permit stage, so it will be something they will have to do to obtain a building permit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Birch-Jones, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of this application, but that's not the time. This is the time just to ask questions, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I asked at the EAD about the comment that this was a net positive for the residents of the SLRD and member municipalities. And I asked about that, and the answer was, I think that Squamish would benefit from the LNG infrastructure. Do I have that right, Ms. Katruniak?
To the chair, I have inquired with them, and they indicated that they have approximately 9,800 customers that utilize gas both in Squamish and the SLRD, and that this project is expected to improve affordability for these customers, as well as reliability, as they will be doing some improvements to the current system, to the local system, as part of this project.
Thank you. That's a much more fulsome answer than we had at the EAD, but that does make me want to support Director Stoner's question about whether this has been referred to the District of Squamish for consideration. It's a good idea.
Sure. No. They're not within 150 meters, are they? Maybe they are. The wood fibre site probably is.
This is from the jurisdiction of the District of Squamish.
Right.
Jenna,
Director Stoner?
If you're ready, Chair, I'd like to propose a motion.
Great. Let's do it.
This be referred back to staff and that they seek further clarity on access and use hours of the site, that they provide the referral to the District of Squamish, and they post notice of the application in the Squamish chief.
Okay.
And some nod to environmental considerations in the
That's not really the issue of the TUP though.
they're leveling the ground there and putting up a work camp.
No, they're not putting up a work camp. These are offices. There won't be people living on this triangle of land.
What are we trying to do here? Are we trying to sort of block wood fibre LNG? Or are we trying to block the pipeline coming through Squamish? What are we trying to do? It seems to me if that pipeline's being built, all those workers
My
are
motion is seconded. I'll happily speak to it.
Okay, the motion is seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Sorry, Claire, did you have?
I just want a point of clarification on procedures here in terms of the request to refer to District of Squamish on a temporary use permit. Is this due to the proximity to the property line and District of Squamish boundaries, or is this largely to do with the more regional nature of this project? Just trying to understand from a more like a bigger picture and other temporary use permit applications that may be coming forward.
Yeah, thank you for seeking that clarity. I think that there is a lot of work that is ongoing as this project ramps up. And I think we've seen it on both sides, that increased amount of coordination and collaboration between the SLRD and the District of Squamish would be useful given the regional impacts of this project. And so the referral is simply so that both the District of Squamish can better understand what the broader impacts of the project are on the region, and also so that the board and the regional district can understand the ongoing work that is happening with respect to the proximity of this proposed TUP to the other works that are happening at a stone's throw away.
Does that help you?
Certainly, and through the chair, the referral is to staff or is to council?
It's just the staff.
Okay. Okay, so I have the motion on the floor with clarity. I have a seconder. I will go back to the mover, Director Stoner, to speak to the motion, and then I will go to Director Herford and Director Pettengill. Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm putting this motion on the floor just because I feel like the information before me is really difficult to make an assessment on the TUP, so I'm not ready to reject it. But even just the context map that Ms. Katerniak provided at the beginning of her presentation is somewhat helpful. The questions around how folks are going to access the site, I think has implications, and then the hours of use also have implications in terms of whether we need to put hours, like operating hours, within a condition of the TUP. And so that is why I think I would like a little bit more information. And I do think that posting this in the Squamish Chief is important, because while the Peak is a regional newspaper, the Squamish Chief is what is read by those, I think, more commonly in the southern part of the regional district. And so I would like to see that notification presented to all folks within the southern component of the SLRD. Thanks.
I was just having difficulty understanding what Jenna was saying. I don't about what sound she's using or what microphone.
Oh, yeah, Jenna, your mic is a little bit garbled, and so it's a little, like, when you speak really fast, it's a little bit hard to keep up. But I think we got your meaning.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Director Herford.
Thank you. I'm supportive of this direction of this direction, although I would like to see improved mapping. Councillor or Director Stoner, sorry, spoke to that in her comments, but I don't think that was captured in the motion. So I'd like to propose an amendment that includes that the feedback also include direction for additional contextual mapping, so we can understand where the yeah. And if that was seconded, I'll speak to the amendment.
So the amendment is to add the mapping. Does someone want to second?
Add contextual mapping, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Seconded by Director Birch Jones. Go ahead and speak to the amendment.
Yeah, thank you. Just on the mapping point, this isn't specific to this project. I believe it was the last meeting we had something come forward that again was just a property without the context around it. And I think when making land use decisions, it's incredibly important that we understand what this is next to, how people will and where it sits in space, because as presented, it sort of sits in space. And I think it's really important when we do our notices that that information is available to the broader public, so they can understand exactly what's proposed and where. As I went looking and for this and I assumed it was on the other side of the little piece of the district that comes up. So I wasn't right in where it was sitting, and I've physically been to that spot. So I think that's important.
Thank you. Any other comments to the amendment? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question on the amendment. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now on the main motion as amended, we'll go, whose phone is that? I will go to Director Pettengill, and then I'll come back to you, Director Herford.
Yeah, thank you. And just on the benefits piece, I'll note that in the district of Squamish, we've been working aggressively to get gas out of buildings. And so making it much easier for people to put gas in buildings is I would say, contrary to the direction we've been taking in general. And so I think, a better understanding of benefits. So far, I haven't heard a benefit or benefit. Yeah, so that would be important to me. I mean, when I look at our RGS and the policy there are several elements of this that is not compatible with our RGS, and a TUP is discretionary, and so I don't see a rationale at this point. But for me, this application is significantly lacking in information that I want for the proponents. So I support the resolution to get some of the more information that's been requested. For me, I would also want to understand the current environmental condition of the site and the impacts of what's proposed in more detail. Just based on what other applications I've seen from Fortis, I have a fair bit of hesitation, and so I wouldn't want to proceed without that information. I do sort of want to put a caveat on asking for this, and it's why I'm not amending the resolution. I think it's up to the proponent if they want to propose that. Without that, I would have trouble supporting this. Probably have trouble supporting it anyways, but I want to be clear sort of what would go into my decision. And right now, if I had to make a decision today with what we have, it would be a no. I'm willing to entertain more detail and so on, but I still think what isn't being addressed at all is alignment with the RGS, which I don't see. So happy to sort of consider the new information when it comes back. But I think there's a fair bit of work to figure out how this TUP aligns with our RGS.
Thank you. Back to Director Herford.
Yeah, thank you. I'm supportive of this direction. I think jurisdiction is really important, and I think in this case, the referring to the District of Squamish is a reasonable thing to do, given that it's directly adjacent to the jurisdiction, and also the access and egress from the sites. Like there's an overlap in use there, so really ensuring that that everyone understands all the moving pieces. And I think that overall, this project, having done a bunch of this work through my work at the District of Squamish, it's been really challenging to understand the cumulative impacts and right from the big picture pieces right down to a TUP on one side of the line versus a use on the other side of the line. So I think it's really important that us as local governments can be part of the solution of improving communication amongst ourselves in a local government space, so that we can best contextualize exactly what it is that's happening, and it's really challenging when we have these decisions sort of viewed in isolation, because nothing is happening here in isolation, and the scope is quite large. So clearly understanding what that is in the broadest sense possible, I think is really important. I already spoke earlier to the mapping piece, and then the notice piece, I think is critical. And again, things that happen, and I'd be interested to hear from Director Rainbow on things that happen, like where the best place to notice is, and maybe we need to adjust policy if we don't clearly articulate that things that happen in Area D should be included in notice in the Squamish Chief. I don't know where that line is, but it's somewhere before this. So I think it's really important that it gets that notice gets published there. I also think I am also struggling with the RGS alignment, and I could see doing something outside of the RGS to or sort of contrary to the RGS for a temporary use that advances a goal of the RGS. If I'm thinking about that, if that makes sense, and I'm having a hard time seeing that here. So some rationale to sort of relate the staff recommendation to the existing policy, because I do see a conflict there. Also, I do want to challenge the proponents, and any proponent, it's not just this proponent, but sort of their rationale / sales pitch for justification. I find really challenging when it gets repeated without being vetted, and that's the same. I would have that. That would get my hackles up wherever that happens, and it's particularly challenging in this case to hear that, as others have spoken to the challenges that we've seen in the region and the direction that that we want to go. So I think some vetting of that and making sure that what we're saying, in particularly in our staff reports, is accurate. And if that's the proponent claims as a disclaimer, then maybe that's what needs to happen. But just being there as part of the rationale is challenging.
Thank you. I'm Mike, Jack. Mike, go ahead.
I'll be supporting the motion. Just a quick question. Has there been another site for these offices explored? I'm just wondering if the board didn't support this TUP application. I'm just curious if what the alternatives might be if we're aware of them.
No. Oh. I'd like to hear from staff. I don't want you defending the
Very gentle comment.
Through the chair.
Ms. Kidroniak.
Thank you. So we no, we haven't explored other sites, but if that is of interest, I can certainly ask them if they have any other sites in mind.
Okay. Jack?
Thanks, Chair. I think this is a good direction. It's funny, I had my hand up to ask questions 4 different times, and then people asked the question that I was going to ask. So it seems like our minds are somewhat aligned on where we are going with this. I find it really hard to take a decision like this that is so out of context and taken as a single piece rather than connected to the benefits agreement that would be signed on any revenues. And I find sort of very general statements about the benefits challenging as well. So I'm supportive of the direction that this is going, and I look forward to seeing those more contextual pieces come back to us again when it is so close to existing municipal boundaries. I think that it's important that both the regional district and the municipality be able to consider it. And so I think that context will be useful for me. I'll be supporting this resolution. Thanks.
You. Go ahead, Tony. Please don't fight someone on.
No, I'm supporting this. I just want to make this comment. I didn't know about this until it showed up on the EAD agenda. I have no idea whether they've looked at other sites or explored other places in Area D. And usually if a TUP is coming from somebody for Area D, they've told me about it, they've talked to me about it. And I know more, and I know nothing about this. So maybe a suggestion to staff that when they get an application like this, suggest, and I've also known before this and not had a reply. So there you go.
Okay. I'm calling the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Is it relevant?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, let's hear it.
It was my misunderstanding on the accommodation piece of this, because it's just a storage facility.
Yeah.
Basically, the yard. To me, looking at alternatives, I don't see why it wouldn't be in the wood fire property, rather than on ground land. And the other piece of it is we've got the same situation going on right now with the access and economy study for the Doy Dam project that BCI has done their surveys now, and they've got information. And they got picked 4 areas for work camp, and one of them was actually at the Gun Lake Airport. And you want to talk about feedback. So that whole process was a good process that BCI was doing compared to this TPU. Because eventually they'll be coming for a TPU for their work now.
The reason I ask if it's relevant is, was it going to change the outcome of the resolution?
No, it wasn't.
And so, no, and thank you, and let's
Yeah.
move on. We are at 8.3. Ms. Stewart on the Regional Growth Strategy Annual Report.
So thank you. through the chair, I will try and keep this brief. Really, the purpose of this report is to provide the board with an update on RGS implementation and progress in recommend indicator monitoring be completed in 2025 and inform the board of the RGS review consideration. And this is all pursuant to the Local Government Act requirements. So, indicator monitoring, we have 31 indicators in total that are used to monitor progress towards our RGS goals. Indicators were monitored in 2021 for the 2016 to 2020 time period. Based on the previous board resolution from 2017, we now conduct indicator monitoring every 2 to 5 years, which is more aligned with the data that's available. So that is why we are suggesting we conduct indicator monitoring in 2025, which also coincides with when we will hopefully be wrapping up the RGS review. So another requirement of the Local Government Act is that we provide an annual update report on our RGS progress and implementation, which is one of the purposes of this report. Over the past year, work associated with the RGS focused on collaborative planning and information sharing, as well as RGS implementation. Some of the collaborative planning and information sharing includes our RGS steering committee meetings, as well as involvement on intergovernmental advisory committees and participation in that work. I won't be Appendix A, which is the full summary of the implementation that our organization, implementation activities that our organization has undertaken in 2023. But I think a lot of really important and impactful work has taken place over the last year. And it was exciting for me to see all of that land on one page. And it's really nice to see all the different departments contributing in all the ways. Moving on to the RGS review consideration, which is also a Local Government Act requirement. Every 5 years, we must consider a review of the RGS. And we have outstanding board resolutions from 2022 regarding greenhouse gas targets and aligning with IPCC targets. We also have an outstanding resolution around discussing additional indicator monitoring, as well as issues around childcare, food production. Yes, so various things. So I guess the point is we have some outstanding resolutions. It was anticipated that some of that work would be taken on by the new SLRD Climate Action Resilience Specialist, but that position no longer exists. We're now hoping to wrap that into our RGS review work. And there are some examples in the staff report of items that could be considered or included as part of an RGS review amendment. And really, if we look at the staff recommendations, the first is that pursuant to Section 452 of the Local Government Act, the board accept the annual report on 2023 RGS implementation and progress, that the board consider whether to review the RGS for possible amendment, and given the outstanding resolutions, direct staff to undertake review of the RGS in 2024, to review the RGS, to refer the RGS review consideration to the RGS steering committee for input as to whether the proposed amendment would be considered a major or a minor amendment. And 3, to bring back a report regarding the amendment type, proposed approach, and formal RGS review initiation to the board. And then finally, that the board directs staff to undertake indicator monitoring in 2025 following the RGS review consideration and amendments. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Stoner, go ahead with a question.
Thanks so much to the chair for the fantastic update and all the work compiled into one report. My question is just around timing of the proposed RGS review. So I appreciate that by legislation, we're required to consider a review. Following your earlier report this morning on the small scale housing legislation, the update of the housing needs assessment, realistically, that means we're not looking like those won't be done until probably like later in 2024. And so I'm just curious why we would propose doing a review in 2024 when there's that work underway, and if we may just want to push that to 2025, also to align with the OCP updates that we know we're going to have to do for that same housing legislation for 2025. So I just want to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts between the RGS, the OCP amendments, and the housing legislation components.
Sure, thank you. So through the chair, I think part of the work right now is, considering a review. Are there things in the RGS that we want to review? First question. And then what's the nature? Is it a major or minor amendment? That's the second question. So those are kind of, I see those a bit as like, is there a need? And then like, let's scope that out a bit. I see that work happening with the steering committee. And then, then we're looking at how does the Regional Affordable Housing Forum and Direction on Climate Action and the housing legislation, all this work that's underway, how are there inputs or outputs from that work that are going to shape strategic directions and our goals in the RGS? And I think the answer is likely yes. So initiating the RGS review, at as early as we're looking at, the end of 2024, and maybe it will get pushed. So I think that is a very, that's a good thing for us to keep in mind, that realistically our timelines may get bumped depending on the outcomes of this work. And I think maybe the important thing for us right now is for the board to determine whether a review is necessary, and then how we go about scoping that out and start initiating some of those steps, knowing that the other pieces and what comes out of that work could mean that it's a longer process.
Right. Thank you. I love this report, and as usual, when I'm reading your reports, I'm thinking, well, they haven't mentioned the invasive species. Oh, there's the invasive species. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, this is really good work. I'm really grateful, and I'm pretty comfortable with our staff that know so much about these topics to be doing this work. And so I've kind of recovered from the fact that we almost had a climate position and then we didn't, but here we are. This is good work. And I wondered one thing about is if we incorporate land conservation or acquisition of land, like we've got some pretty nice protected areas in the region. And I didn't really see that reflected in the report, but that's something that's measurable and that we've done some good work on. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm just
Okay.
looking at what kind of resolution do you want here? Is it?
Oh, option one.
Which is to receive agenda.
Where's that?
Except it's on page 1.
I'm just looking at the ones at the
Yeah,
beginning.
so accept the annual report and as presented. And
So that's my question. Can we do all of those in one go? It looks like we can so I would move option 1.
Yeah, so I think we'll do the first that
Oh,
first.
okay.
Yeah, if we can parse them out, I think it'll be easier for
Question
staff.
on the agenda.
Okay. I'll move 1.
okay,
The first that.
yeah, that is received and accepted as presented. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Comments? Any opposed? Motion carries.
What's
Then
the next, Angela?
And then there's a bit of a direction request sort of embedded within the request, and that's just around the direction to staff, whether or not the board is wishing them to undertake the review refer the RGS review consideration to the steering committee. And number 3, bring back a report regarding the amendment type, proposed approach, and formal RGS initiation.
I'd be quite happy to move that.
Okay.
I'll
moved
second
by
that.
Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments?
So
Go
sorry,
ahead.
so that's all 3 things? I thought,
Well, there's
Ms.
still a
Stewart, are
couple
you
of
looking for,
questions.
Looks like 3
you're looking
components, right?
for all of them? Okay, there's 3
There's
components,
no
I guess,
order.
3 steps. And just to circle back to the question around timing, I see this as like initiating the review in 2024. I wouldn't have any, like, we shouldn't expect that it's going to be complete in 2024.
That's for that.
Initiated in 2020.
Okay, good?
Yep.
Everyone good? I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. And
that, I would move that.
board directs staff to undertake indicator monitoring in 2025 following the RGS review consideration and amendments. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Comments? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Claire.
And did we cover the future committee of the whole meeting? Would you like that covered as well? We discussed monitoring, additional monitoring indicators that could be incorporated into the regional growth strategy.
I thought that was in.
Or did we, I'm
that
not
third
sure if we
thing, isn't
covered
it?
that. We did
Yeah,
cover
we
that?
did.
Okay,
Yeah.
apologies. We didn't miss anything. Very good work on this. Thank
We have 15
you.
minutes until we're calling a hard stop because everybody wants to go home. Okay, 8.4, Fraser Valley Regional District Regional Growth Strategy, referral for acceptance. We don't need to speak to this. Does anybody have any questions? We do have staff here that maybe can answer questions, but I think it's fairly straightforward. Go ahead, Director Pettengill.
Yeah, the one note I had, which I'm doubting myself now, when I first read this, and there's a number of links, but they had GHG targets which were below, like worse than Clean BC and worse than the IPCC targets, which concerned me given we're talking about adopting IPCC in ours. And I was just trying to find the exact page, and now I see different numbers. So I'm not sure if I was looking at the wrong draft. So I'm not quite sure how to handle this, because basically if the final draft they're proposing has worse targets than even Clean BC, I think we should make a comment on that and encourage them to at least meet Clean BC, ideally IPCC. I may have been looking at an earlier draft in the links we had, and I'm trying to do this on the fly. So I'm not sure if I can ask that we make that comment if the final draft has less ambitious targets than the than IPCC targets.
Could we defer it till tomorrow and give Chris a chance to check that out?
Sure.
Want to do that,
Do
Chris?
you want to do that, Chris?
Sure, I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, motion to defer to tomorrow. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Herford. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. 8.5, who's speaking to this? Go ahead, I can speak to it.
Thank you. So this report is pertaining to the ongoing transfer of the Pemberton and District Recreation Service to the Village of Pemberton. Phase 1 of the Recreation Service transfer was completed when the SLRD Service Establishing Bylaw 1784-2022 was adopted by the board on June 28, 2023. Phase 2 of the transfer is now underway with discussions between the SLRD and the Village of Pemberton to develop a draft financial contribution agreement and a draft transfer of assets agreement for consideration by the board at a future date. To allow time for these 2 new draft agreements to be developed in collaboration with the Village of Pemberton, staff are recommending an extension of the current service agreement, the license of use agreement, and the bylaw enforcement agreement until December 31st, 2025. Drafts of these 3 extension agreements are attached to this staff report. And I'm available to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Director Mack.
No, I'll just move option 1 recommendation to set out above preferred option.
Would you like to second that, Director Demers?
Sure.
Thanks. Does anyone have any comments? Go ahead.
Through the chair, because of, if we could parse out the resolutions, just because there is some delegated authority within them, so there's different weighted votes. So if we could move ahead with passing the first three that's
Yep.
as a grouping.
Yep.
Second.
Friendly amendment and everyone comfortable with what we're doing?
The first three, that's
Yeah.
good.
Okay, is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. And then,
And then we will do the next one as a single, that the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District enter into an agreement with Pemberton to
Leave it.
extend services agreement.
You missed that one about the CAO.
we haven't got to that one yet.
So the next that.
Oh, yeah,
a single.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I
We
beg
did
your
the
pardon.
first three.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And then CAO will be authorized to sign the second extension.
Moved.
No, just the agreement.
I'm looking at the report.
Okay.
It's not written here the way it is on here. So which one are you on?
I am on that the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District enter into an agreement with the Village of Pemberton to extend the service agreement dated October 2nd, 2018 for a further 15-month period
Okay,
as a single.
okay, thank you.
Moved.
Ringo, second by Director Stoner. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
And then the next that as a single.
I'll move that.
As the CAO
CAO. Yep.
be authorized to sign the second extension. Okay,
Second.
moved and seconded. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Then,
The next one is a single motion.
okay,
Moved.
Second.
anyone opposed? Motion carries.
The next one is a single.
Move that.
Okay. We're,
CAO be authorized to sign second extension.
thank you. Second. Yep. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
And then a motion to enter into an agreement with the Village of Pemberton to extend the bylaw enforcement agreement until December 31st, 2025.
Yep.
Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
And then the final motion that the CAO be authorized to sign the extension.
Yep, I'll move that.
And seconded by Director Demare. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Right.
All right. Moving on, 8.6. You have 8 minutes. Director Demare, do you want to speak to it?
No, that's Mark.
Oh, it's Mark.
That's not my
Sorry, I thought this was you. Is Mark coming in? Yep, he's here. Hi, Mark.
Hello, I'll make it quick. So this request for decision is related to the January 25th board meeting resolution that asked staff to consider advocacy resolutions related to the 2023 wildfire season and bring those resolutions to the board for consideration for submission to the SOGA, Southern Ontario Local Government Association. This draft resolution is related to the challenges associated with post-wildfire debris cleanup, given the riparian area protection regulation. And maybe I'll just leave it at that. The resolution in front of you for comments or questions.
Thank you very much. Director Herford, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for bringing this forward. I think this is really interesting piece of work. And you know, we have the unfortunate, we've been unfortunate to to find out firsthand where the limitations are of existing programs. So, I just think I'm wondering about, and I'd like to hear from the board about the specificity of the ask. Like, I think such as Gun Lake is important because the issue is broader, and I think that trying to get that provincial advocacy lens into, you know, we're experiencing this in this area, and we need that addressed and we need it in the bigger area. And as it reads, I feel like maybe it's inverted, where it's Gun Lake and this other stuff versus like, this is what needs to happen, and it's happening right now at Gun Lake. Like, so there's maybe some phrasing there. I don't know how others feel about that, but when I'm just thinking about taking on provincial advocacy, the painting that picture of this isn't your problem yet, to the other local governments in attendance is sort of the piece, rather than having it be interpreted as something that's hyper specific, which it isn't. It has broad impacts, but so I'd like to balance those a little better in the wording. So that's maybe a comment, but I'm hoping we can have some conversation around that exactly.
Okay. And do they have this?
No.
Okay. Okay, so we have a cleaned up version of the resolution therefore clause, which I'll read out for the sake of everyone. Therefore be it resolved that the ministry prioritize the development and implementation of an expedited process for cleaning up wildfire debris in riparian areas and develop clear policy guidelines to support the post-wildfire debris cleanup in riparian areas in preparation for future events. So that is far more supportable as far as it's not localized, it's very general. And I think it gives clear direction through our advocacy, or through clear advocacy through our request.
Yes, I worked with staff on getting this to SODA standards, and they've taken my input.
Yeah.
Looks really good.
Okay.
I
The
just want to say,
updated version.
I want to say I can agree completely with what Armin said.
Okay.
I thought I'd like to note that, but I think it's absolutely right. We need to do it so that it could apply to Moberly Lake and the regional district up in the Peace River, and apply anywhere.
Yeah, someone in Logan Lake is not going to support a resolution that's,
Yeah.
and I'm not picking on Logan Lake, but any small community that brings forward a resolution that only supports their community,
Yeah.
that's not the purpose of these area association resolutions.
Yeah, and the background is the Gun Lake scenario, so they got some context.
Yeah. Director Pettingill, go ahead.
Yeah, I heard, and I appreciate this adjustment. I think it makes a lot of sense. My understanding was that UBCM limits us to 2 whereas clauses, and I wonder if we can empower Sal or staff. I know we're against the deadline to move some of the whereas clauses into a backgrounder, so we can come away with 2 whereas clauses in the updated resolved clause.
This resolution is going to SILGA for consideration. And when they put forward those recommendations about how to craft a resolution, they're recommendations only. You could have 100 whereas clauses if you want. It's just, it adds more pages to an already enormous book of resolutions, and maybe doesn't add anything, but it does make it too long to read, and therefore people will be less likely to support it. So that is the rationale behind having only 2 whereas clauses and being as concise as possible, because people stop listening. It's not a requirement.
Okay.
So with that,
So we just wanted this kind of wording with such revisions as needed to be compliant, and then we'll work. And Director Demare has already approved this. We'll talk to him about removing that.
okay. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving forward with this resolution to get it into their deadline, which is tomorrow at 4. Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Any comments? Any opposed? Motion carries. I am going to call for a recess of this open meeting. We will reconvene this meeting tomorrow. I know there's still stuff left on the agenda that we won't get to until tomorrow after the committee of the whole. Thank you, everyone, for your patience today as we deal with weather conditions out of our control, and I will see you all tomorrow at 9.
Thank you, everybody. Good job today.